They are her partners, but Germany's Social Democrats have just elected new leaders who want to leave Angela Merkel's grand coalition. So, can the Chancellor save her government? And what does this uncertainty mean for Germany and for Europe? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Adrian Finighan. Germany's Social Democrats, or SPD, have chosen two leaders who want to leave Angela Merkel's grand coalition. Many of their party members say they want to focus on rebuilding support in the opposition. The coalition between Angela Merkel's Christian Democrats and the SPD was formed last year. The SPD's new leaders ran on a joint ticket with a promise to renegotiate the partnership deal on issues of spending and climate policies. Its Congress is expected to decide by next week on whether the party will continue to support Merkel. But should the SPD decide to leave, the Chancellor has the option of leading a minority government or of forming a new coalition with smaller opposition parties. A snap election is also on the cards. Well, one of the SPD's new leaders, Norbert Walter Borjans, spoke about the importance of keeping his party strong.
Uns ist sehr bewusst. We are very aware that this is not a question of victory or defeat, but this is a question of keeping this great social democratic party together and bringing it together again where it has already moved apart a bit. I think that this is not only something that is great fun, but also a great challenge.
Meanwhile, Chancellor Merkel's CDU says the results have not changed the coalition's agreement.
Das heißt, dass wir Deutschland gut regieren wollen.
We want to rule Germany well. We have created a foundation for this. And this internal decision of the SPD does not change anything on the foundation of the coalition.
Es geht jetzt darum, nicht über.
Now we must not discuss parties, but to look at the challenges Germany is facing and to govern this country well. And for that, there is a foundation, the coalition treaty between SPD and CDU, and nothing changes that.
Let's bring in our guests then for today's discussion. From Berlin, we're joined by Torsten Benner, Director of the Global Public Policy Institute. From Amsterdam, via Skype, Julian Hoes, who's Managing Director of Vocal Europe, a foreign affairs think tank. And from London, we're joined by Matt Kvortrup, author of Angela Merkel, Europe's Most Influential Leader. Gentlemen, welcome to you all. Torsten, let's start with you. Does this change in leadership at the SDP mean that Germany is now heading for an early election?
Thanks for having me. No, I don't think it means that Germany is heading for an early election, at least not anytime soon. If the Social Democrats actually decide under the new leadership to leave the coalition, and that's a big if, because the party convention still needs to decide in favor of it, and then also the members of parliament, the parliamentary group that has voiced some doubts whether they would follow such a vote, they need to agree. Then the SPD ministers will just leave the coalition. We have a budget for 2020 already agreed on, and Angela Merkel will just lead a minority government throughout 2020. Her argument will be, this is out of a sense of national responsibility. Germany has the EU presidency in the second half of 2020. We cannot afford to hold elections now. Plus, there's big constitutional hurdles anyway to have early elections in Germany. So I don't assume that Merkel will leave office anytime soon, but she'll govern with a full cast of CDU ministers. If she has a minority government, she can promote the CDU party leader Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer to vice-chancellor. That can brush up her image. So it very much works in the favor of Merkel and the CDU if the Social Democrats decide to leave the coalition.
Julian, the new leadership at the SDP says that it wants to renegotiate the terms of the grand coalition. What does it want? And are its coalition partners willing to give them what they want?
So what's happening now is that the SPD wants to renegotiate the government spending and the climate change policy, which the CDU under Merkel and AKK have said is not on the table at all. So what's likely to happen now is that the SPD will try and push for this, whereas, as was said just now, AKK and the CDU under her could just decide to push ahead and go for a minority government under Chancellor Angela Merkel.
Okay, Matt, can Angela Merkel keep the grand coalition together? Would she try to struggle on with a minority government?
Well, we haven't had minority governments before in Germany, so that would be a new departure. But then again, new things can happen. But I think it'd be probably more for the Social Democrats to decide whether they want to force the breakup of the coalition. There's no guarantee that there would be a minority government. If there were to be, under some sort of scenario, using some sort of constitutional shenanigan to get a new election, they could become the fourth largest party. I was reading an opinion poll from Forschungsgruppe Wahlen this morning when I was driving in here, and they're actually behind the AfD in the opinion polls. So the Social Democrats, even if they're relatively strong at the Länder level, at the state level, where they have, I think, 7 out of the 16 premierships in Germany, they are not in a strong position. And for them to rock the boat would be a careless act. And also coming back to the question from before, will they be able to negotiate any new coalition deal with the CDU? I think it's extremely unlikely. Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer is looking over her shoulder to the right, to Friedrich Merz, who's a challenger, or could be the challenger to her. So there's no way that the CDU could give way on issues on the left of the party.
Matt, what is going on within the SDP then, this shift to the left? Why would the SDP want to risk losing power and influence by putting the coalition at risk?
I think one has to sort of perhaps even look at the Labour Party in Britain and look at the internal workings of a political party. Like, people join a political party because they have strong views. Now, Olaf Scholz, who lost the leadership election, is actually the third most popular politician in Germany. But a political party does not reflect the people at large. They reflect the membership. And a lot of people in the Social Democratic Party fear that they went way too far when Gerhard Schröder was Chancellor. They embraced many sort of right-wing policies, especially in social affairs issues. And therefore, I think they want to go back to basics. They want to go, solidify their base, as it's called. They want to win votes back from the Left Party, possibly even from the Green Party. And they're looking towards a period in opposition where they can sort of cleanse themselves of being tainted by association with the Union, the CDU, and the CSU.
Torsten, do you agree with that? Could the SDP find itself embroiled in some kind of internal turmoil? Could division over the direction of the party be destabilizing for it? Could it end up tearing it apart?
That's already happening. I mean, this election is the result of this. It's a result of a very deep fatigue within the party. The Social Democrats have been in power in Germany at the national level for 16 out of the past 20 years. They started out 20 years ago with more than 35% of the vote. Now they're polling at about 13 to 17%. So they've lost popularity tremendously, and many party members just want out. They want out of government. They think they need to go in opposition, but they don't really have a path there. This election that brought two relative aging nobodies or lightweight candidates to the helm of the party, in a sense, was very much a relitigation of the Gerhard Schröder years, the reform that cut some welfare spending. That's when the party started tearing apart. Some of these wounds from the early 2000s still haven't healed. The challenge, or the other candidate that lost, Olaf Scholz, is very much an embodiment of the Schröder centrist agenda. Now many just long for return to whatever kind of core the SPD is supposed to be about, a leftist core, and they hope that then they will fare better. But it's very hard to see if they jump out of the window now and say, bye-bye, Grand Coalition, we're tired of government. If Germany then, in fact, headed for elections, what's the offer of the Social Democrats to the population? Say, please vote for us. We want to be in opposition. That's not exactly a winning formula. And it's quite tragic that none of the two candidate pairs or duos really offered a path toward the future, what social democracy in 10 years should be all about, what Germany want to achieve in the coming 10 years. None of the two finalist duos really offered any sense of that, and neither does Chancellor Merkel, for that matter. So Germany is very much adrift and dealing with its own internal divisions, and much rather than looking toward the future at the moment.
Okay, Julian, I mean, before we move on, let's ask one more question about the SDP. You heard what Torsten and Matt were saying there. Is the party's dwindling popularity with voters simply because the party has moved too far towards the political centre? Are its leaders right? Do they need a reset?
I mean, that's going to be the impression that people are going to be taking from this. For example, as has been said, SPD are not doing very well. They're polling behind the Grüne. They are almost level/under the AfD. And some people could draw from this conclusion that they've strayed from the left. They're not taking enough socially democratic policies and putting it forward to the membership and putting it forward to the general public in Germany. And of course, the problem when you're in coalition, and we saw this in the UK with the Lib Dems, is that quite frequently you become tainted by the brush of having the majority party dictating to you what exactly it wants its primary goals to be. And the SPD have more than likely been dragged to the centre, been seen as more of a centre party, which is going to impact its popularity. And we see that we could see that this is a move to attract the Grüne voter, to bring people back from the AfD, to bring people back towards sort of sensible social democratic policies and politics. So I'd say this could be an explanation for what's happened.
Matt, I think there's consensus among us here that an election is possibly the least likely option. But if there were to be a general election in Germany, who would benefit most? The Greens, the AfD, which at least under its new leadership looks as though it won't be moving further to the right?
No, I think the AfD would do relatively well, but they are in some ways an irrelevant party because they are so far to the right that it's inconceivable that they could join a coalition. There might be people who sort of privately in the CSU and possibly even in the CDU would contemplate that, but that would really not go down well in Germany at large. I think the party that would really do well is the Green Party. I mean, we have had opinion polls that suggest that the Green Party could be even bigger than the CDU. There's a lot of sort of focus on environmental issues. The Green Party have at the state level have done well. They've showed they could be efficient managers, and so I think the Green Party would do well. And I think in some ways it's almost like a realignment in German politics where the Green Party is going to be the main party of the left. And of course what will be then interesting is to see if we'll get the so-called Jamaica coalition or a coalition of the Green Party, the CDU, CSU and the Liberals. Now they tried to do that last time. The Liberals weren't terribly keen and pulled out. But I think that would probably be the future. But the AfD don't have coalition potential and they don't have blackmail potential. So even if they were to get 15% of the votes, they will be, politically speaking, relatively irrelevant.
Torsten, after 10 years of stability under Angela Merkel, where is Germany headed right now? Will it be able to maintain its dominant economic and political position within the EU?
That's a big question mark. Germany is very much adrift. Ever since the elections in 2017, Germany has been extremely inward-looking. This so-called Grand Coalition was a very unhappy marriage from the get-go, only born out of the failure of the negotiations of this so-called Jamaica coalition that then failed to come into existence. It's the current government doesn't show any path forward. Germans are divided still on issues of migration, climate change, and we're wasting precious time actually to invest in a stronger Europe that can defend itself also against an ever more aggressive China. And we're failing to invest in the strength of our own industrial base. Germany had a fantastic economic development for the most part over the past 10 to 15 years. We've had a good run, but it's very unclear whether Germany is well prepared for kind of ensuring prosperity of our economy in the future. We should be investing and discussing this right now, but rather we're kind of dealing with this kind of petty internal domestic political turmoil, and Germany is very much adrift. It's still a default big country in Europe. It won't just become politically irrelevant. It's way too big for this, but right now, we're not assuming any sort of leadership role. We've kind of given that to French President Macron, who's now the more active figure on the European political scene.
Julian, this petty domestic internal turmoil, as Torsten put it, to what extent is that diminishing Germany's reputation for political stability and leadership within the EU, do you think?
Well, the problem is that it's not simply the petty domestic politics that are going to be having an impact on this. It's the shift of balance that's occurring across Europe. So, for example, since the election of President Macron in France, it's very much been a case of Macron's been taking the front seat in European politics, with the Sorbonne speech, with all of his commentary, with his most recent comments on NATO. France has almost changed positions with Germany, and that is becoming a far more active and far more visible presence. And I don't necessarily think that it's purely going to be an issue of Germany becoming irrelevant, Germany losing its power. It's what we're likely to see is France and Germany will switch places compared to where they were 5 or 10 years ago, for example, where France was seen as the problem child in Europe, the sort of the not very helpful partner who always made grandiose claims and grandiose promises and never really delivered. However, in Germany's case, right now it's still one of the most powerful economies in Europe, if not the most powerful. So that won't go away unless Germany somehow falls into a recession in the coming year or two, or depending on who becomes next chancellor, for example. If it's AKK, it's likely that Germany is going to lose slightly more presence, and primarily for the fact that AKK tends to have quite a bit of agreement with President Macron and may end up following and supporting his plans. However, I just want to go back to the point on the Green Party becoming more powerful. It's true that I think that the Green Party is the single highest polling party in Germany right now. If it wasn't for the CDU-CSU coalition that takes place every election, the Grüne would be the biggest party in the Bundestag. Unfortunately, that's not the case, but that is going to have an effect on how the German politics is shaped in the years to come, vis-a-vis China, Russia, the US, even within Europe. With the Green New Deal, the Grüne may have even more power than we expect, and this may lead to Germany having a more prominent position or maintaining its prominent position when it comes to European politics.
Matt, look, I just want to go back to the first part of what Julian was saying there, this potential for France and Germany to switch places almost within the EU. I mean, to what extent is France looking to exploit this diminishing of Germany's reputation?
Well, I think it frankly is quite fanciful because the French economy is nowhere near as strong as the German one. I think Macron does a good talk, but I'm not sure he does the same kind of walk. He can say slightly naughty things about NATO and about Europe, but he's got his own problems. He's never quite recovered from the Gilets jaunes situation. He has enacted a number of reforms, which he was able to do because he's got a large majority in the Assemblée Nationale, but there will also at some stage be French elections. France in some ways is a greater problem child because we have Front National. We don't have anything like Front National. I mean, AfD are probably to the right of Front National, but they would not in any way gain power. So France is not as stable. And I think the problem we have in Europe at the moment is that we have a very chaotic situation in Britain, which in a year's time could probably lead to a hard Brexit because there won't be a deal. Italy has not exactly a stable government. Spain is trying to find a government. Germany is wobbling a bit, and France is doing a good talk, or Macron is doing a good talk. But the stability in France is in the longer run is not to be taken for granted. So I think the problem we have throughout Europe is that we really need now to have stability in Germany so as the other ones can get on with their squabbling. And I think relatively speaking, I mean, the stability in Germany is not catastrophic. It's just we're used to having absolute stability in Germany, and therefore we panic a bit, and we should probably be concerned. But I think we also need to put this into perspective.
Matt, to what extent is all of this turmoil within Germany at the moment ultimately to do with Angela Merkel's leadership? I mean, she's still Chancellor, but she no longer leads her own party.
No, that is a problem. Of course, Schröder also stood down, and when he didn't lead his own party, he lost some sort of influence. I think, again, we need to put it into perspective. Angela Merkel is still, by some distance, the most popular politician in Germany. The second most popular is Robert Habeck, who is the Green, one of the two Green leaders, and then Olaf Scholz is the third most popular. So, but I think the problem is that he's very much in this sort of lame duck position. If you saw at the conference, the CDU conference, most of the time she didn't talk. She was just sitting there checking her phone. And the problem that we have in Europe is that we are not quite sure who will be the next contender and the leader of the CDU, or it's known as the K question in Germany. Who's going to be the candidate for Chancellor for the CDU? And Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer is not a charismatic politician, nor is Angela Merkel, but she's struggling. Even if she was able to go for the sort of back me or sack me approach at the conference, she doesn't look as sure-footed as she could be, and therefore people are then talking about Söder from Bavaria could be a Chancellor candidate. He's not that popular generally in Germany, and Friedrich Merz could come in, and it's a question of what's happening in the Christian Democrats rather than in Germany that I think is the problem.
Julian, would you agree with that very briefly?
Yes, in some ways I would agree with that. It is a case of in Europe we don't know who's going to be leading Germany soon. However, that lack of stability, which has been a bedrock of European politics for the past decades, now is very much it can pose a problem, because if you lose confidence in what's happening in a country, then, as people say, we see a wobble, and sometimes some markets can overreact, some political players can overreact. Some people could see the loss of CDU influence as a dangerous precedent for German politics, for example, and that could have a knock-on effect on how people are viewing Germany. And this is problematic because all it takes is, for example, we end up in a situation, as was pointed out, where the AfD maybe exploit this more and then push quite hard and have a very lucky election.
Yeah.
Okay. And you have people starting to panic.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Julian. Matt, I'm sorry, Torsten, we've got about a minute left on the programme. We haven't mentioned Eastern Europe. We talked about France and Germany switching places, perhaps. What about Eastern Europe, particularly Poland? Where does Poland stand in the jockeying for influence within the EU? Very briefly, please.
And the Polish government very much promotes its nationalist agenda, cracking down on the rule of law domestically. The same goes for the Hungarian Prime Minister Orban. So they will, of course, promote their own national interest and try to work together also with the new Commission leadership. Where that leaves Europe, it's very much up in the air. The same way, it's very much up in the air who will be the next German Chancellor. Right now, none of the three parties, the main three parties, have a clear candidate for Chancellor. If we had elections tomorrow, there's a lot of uncertainty in Germany, and that's just the name of the game at the moment.
Gentlemen, we're out of time. Many thanks indeed for being with us on today's Inside Story. As always, thank you for watching the programme. Don't forget you can see it again at any time just by going to the website at aljazeera.com. For further discussion, join us at our Facebook page at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle at AJ Inside Story. From me, Adrian Finighan, and the whole team here in Doha. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again. Bye for now.